All right, it's 10 o'clock, Monday, November 10th, regular session of the Board of Supervisors. First item on the agenda is the agenda and the minutes from the November 3rd regular session.
I move to approve.
Motion and second to approve the agenda and the minutes as presented. Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comments on agenda items only. Public hearing none yet. So with that, we'll move on to new business. Mr. Auditor.
Claims are prepared in front of you, sir. Move to approve. Second.
Motion and second to approve the claims as presented. Any further comment there? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Payroll.
We have two items for you today. First, we got the warrant registered for period ending 11/1/2025. I move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the payroll registered. Further comment? All in favor? Aye.
And then we have five new hires for the sheriff's office, 3 deputies and 2 jailers, effective various dates within November. This will be resolution. Move resolution with 16 through. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution 2025 number 63 on the sheriff's new hires. Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Anything else, Bob?
No, sir.
We'll move on to item number 3, drainage.
I have 2 drainage problems that were reported. First one is in Drainage District 64, reported by Rebecca Caskers by Swellville. Second one is in Drainage District 86, just south of Mason City, reported by Keith Sutcliffe, report of standing water. Recommend that the drainage watchman be assigned to investigate.
I move to approve.
Drainage watchman investigate both of those.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to have the drainage watchman look into the 2 drainage issues as presented. Any further comment? All in favor? Aye. Passes. Item number 4, Mr. Auditor.
This be a standard transfer of funds. I think everything is prepared in front of you, and it would be a resolution.
Move resolution 62.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve resolution 2025 number 64. Further comment on the transfer? All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Item number 5 is to approve the sheriff's monthly report of fees. This is standard.
Move to approve. Second.
The motion and second to approve the presented the sheriff's fees. All in favor? Aye. Passes. See here. And a couple minutes yet, so we'll do item number 7 as a manure management report, and I didn't see any changes there, gentlemen.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the manure management report as presented. All in favor? Aye. Brandon, you want to just take a couple minutes here?
Sure.
Thank you for going to the podium.
Yeah, no problem. So good morning, I guess, to start off like I usually say. You guys probably noticed because it's right outside your window, but we got the pole erected out there, the base of Sports Friday. So now each courthouse is back in commission for the flag pole. So I'm glad that's complete. Over the weekend, we got a minor amount of snow. There wasn't slippery enough or enough accumulation for us to send out the plow. We were ready to go, but we didn't have that to do anything. This week, we're going to be putting on some more of the wing posts. We're not going to put on any of the actual front walls or wing blades. It's just extra weight that causes us to have more issues when we're again now. So, we're also going to be doing a lot of mowing and stockpiling on just our grading to try and keep up with the harvest conditions out there to try and keep those in as good a condition as possible. The main focus is going to be intersection and stop signs. The middle areas usually hold up better, but the areas where acceleration, deceleration, and turning are usually the spot where the rough roads develop. So that's where we're focusing. Other than that, we have 2 trucks down with hydraulic problems at the moment. One of them We talk. Second one.
Okay. Thanks. We'll come back to you, Brandon. Appreciate it. At this time, it's 10:05. I'm gonna open the public hearing on the proposed ordinance 11C, which is the health nuisance ordinance. And, who wants to lead this? Cara? Okay.
Sure. So this is,
Just a second. Oh, will she pick up where she's at?
If she can go to the podium, that'd be great.
Okay. Thanks, Cara.
sure. Good morning, Carl Vogelstein, Health Director. So this is the second reading of the proposed changes to the some concerns have been brought to our attention as we were revising this and through the first hearing. And we just want to speak to some of those concerns. So the first thing I wanted to point out is this is a revision of an ordinance that already exists within the books of Cerro Gordo. And the reason that we did this revision was to make some things a little bit more clear for people to understand and to abide by. So I know there was some concern about how this would interact with state code. And so, you know, in Iowa, local ordinances and state laws operate complementarily, designed to serve statewide and local interests, so that each community can meet its individual needs. So when we revised this ordinance, we took into account several state chapters within the Iowa Code, including the nuisance ordinance, and several other, like chapter 352, that was brought up as a concern. Right. So we're presenting this ordinance again. There have not been any material changes since the last reading. We did take out one section of one definition on abandoned buildings that didn't account into Cerro Gordo County, and then we added page numbers. We have the ordinance. If you don't have it, like a copy of it, we did bring 10 copies with us for you to look at and bring up questions. Yeah, so.
I've got a copy.
Jody has all the copies. Nope.
It's the one that's on the packet, right, on the website.
Okay. Pardon me?
Yes. It's the one that's on the website, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so, anybody here care to speak to this? Okay, if you go to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Matthew Doan, 598 250th Street, Thornton, Iowa, 50479. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Matthew Doan. My family owns land in Cerro Gordo County. I've lived and worked here most of my life. I'm proud to raise food, care for the land, and keep this county's rural character strong. I'm here today because Ordinance 11C may sound like common sense. Health protection. But as written, it puts our farms, property rights, and rural economy at real risk. I'm going to explain in 4 points. First, it shifts the heavy costs onto ordinary rural families. The ordinance lets the county decide something is a, quote, nuisance, end quote. Send a notice, and if it's not fixed fast enough, send in crews and bill the owner through a tax lien. Most of us can't afford thousands of dollars for surprise cleanup orders on equipment, fence rows, or old barns we're repairing. Every day of violation can bring another fine. That's not protecting public health. That's financially cornering the very people who keep this county running. Second, it gives too much power and too little time. If a farmer gets a notice, we have just 10 days to respond. And if we miss that window, the county automatically assumes we're guilty. We all know how harvest or calving season goes, and 10 days can vanish in the blink of an eye. Granting inspectors authority to enter private land with a warrant and impose penalties sounds more like city code enforcement than rural Iowa. Cerro Gordo County has always respected private property. This ordinance chips away at that trust. Third, it turns normal farm life into a potential offense. Ordinance 11C lists smells, smoke, manure, dead animals, open burning, and noxious substances as nuisances. But those are part of everyday agriculture. Manure means we're fertilizing, not polluting. A whiff of silage or livestock isn't offensive. It's the smell of a working farm. Burning a brush pile or a wind-fallen tree isn't neglect, it's maintenance. Iowa's right to farm law exists precisely so normal farm practices aren't treated as public nuisances. This ordinance risks undoing that protection. Finally, it divides neighbors and discourages young farmers. Enforcement here relies on complaints. That means neighbor against neighbor, instead of neighbor helping neighbor. A single disagreement over a shed or a tractor could spark a costly investigation, and I'm afraid when word spreads that Cerro Gordo is a county where the government can fine or seize property over unsightly farm items, who's going to invest or even want to invest here? Not the next generation. We need to stay on the land. So in closing, supervisors, we all want health and safety. We already have state laws that cover manure management, open burning, and waste disposal. We do not need another layer that punishes people for living rural lives. Please protect the people who feed this county, vote no on Ordinance 11C, and let's work together on a fairer approach that targets real hazards without criminalizing hardworking farmers and homeowners. Thank you for your time and listening to those of us who make our living from this land.
Thank you. Anybody else there? Anybody else for the public meeting? Go ahead.
Wareham, 2006, 16th Avenue North, Clear Lake, Iowa. And the definitions on their chunk, it has anything considered to be useless, worthless, or below quality. Beauty is beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So some people's junk is another one's treasure. And during World War II, one of the reasons this country won the war is because there was so much scrap metal out the farms that was available to be recycled. So maybe that's in the past, but maybe it's a lesson we need to keep. I would say that some of these definitions, starting out with anything can be useless, worthless, or below quality, I disagree with all of that. That's my main point right now.
Anybody else care to address? I got a couple of questions, Cara, that you and I have talked about them over the course of the last few years, but our abilities versus the DNR, it's like item number P, carcasses of animals not disposed of within 24 hours. Really nothing we can do about that anyway.
So generally, we would turn those cases over to the appropriate authority for that.
Which was the DNR in the previous cases, and they didn't squat it anyway. But
I'd also it's ag that one actually.
We talked about this last time, and I do have some concerns on the ordinance. Animals and stuff like that. I mean, that's just common practice for the county, and it's been that way for decades or generations in any family farm. So I don't want to say the enforcement of this, but this more, we're not eliminating what was there. It was already there. We're just cleaning up verbiage in a lot of cases, but we're not really going to go out and cite farmers for having wild things on their property or stumps
This ordinance has been in effect since 1989. There's been a nuisance ordinance in Cerro Gordo County. So this is a revision of that ordinance.
I agree with Mr. Doan too, it's like, trees, down trees, I mean, that's maintenance, and burning's always been appropriate or fine in the county, to an extent, correct?
Yes, can we give you some examples of what
Yeah, please.
complaints that we get? So, we wrote up a short case history from 2023 to present. We've received 26 nuisance complaints and cases. 4 of the 26 cases were unfounded. So the trees were healthy, junk vehicles were in a grove area, property was without evidence of trash or vermin. The majority of the cases that we got over that time frame was abandoned or vacant homes or buildings. And so that's usually people are very concerned that children are getting access to the structures or they're becoming harborage site for pests. The secondary concern was excessive accumulation of junk in and around the property. So that's primarily when we get called in, is a neighbor has an issue, there's an open shed and the neighborhood kids are playing in it, or I've seen animals going in and out of it.
We had a similar situation in the northwest part of the county 7 years ago, I believe, and it was basically being used for drugs and whatever. So, I mean, I understand what you're doing, but at the same token, I understand the farmer's position. I just looking for clarification for their benefit. We're not going to go beating on their door for.
No. And we're not going to violate state code. Chapter 352 is the Iowa Right to Farm Act.
And with that, I would probably have a word, but ask for a response from you. That you don't care.
The definitions, as I looked at it in accordance with 11C, have been ripped from the Iowa Code. That is true. Except in Iowa Code, there's the words that say in cities added, which has been omitted from this. That I've got a problem with. And you can tell me you won't do something, but the law is there. The fact that it's there gives the government overreach power, and that I don't like. That is a price that I'm not really willing to want to pay, and I'm sure any farmer would agree with me. You can say, well, we're not going to do it. But what happens when a neighbor, like I said, says, you know what? I think I want to put the screws to that guy. And now he starts making complaints. You could take in accordance with these definitions and call a field of corn ready for harvest overgrown vegetation that is a fire hazard. That technically follows the definition. It's dry, it's flammable, it's grown, so thus, so where are you going to draw the line? Just because a few bad apples have wrecked things for people doesn't mean everybody in the entire county should suffer for this.
But we still have to have a tool in order to enforce the few bad apples. So what would you
have the tools?
Yes, that's where we might disagree.
We have the DNR, don't we? Do we not have laws as it is? Are you telling me that we need such a broad overreach to address?
Is it a broad overreach compared to what's already in the books for something that we've had on since 1989?
I would say yes.
When you drove here to work, I know I drove this morning contemplating this. I went 57 miles an hour. Guess what the speed limit was?
Well,
55. But I've gotten pulled over? I could have. Did law enforcement have the discretion to say, you know what? I'm not pulling him over because he's going 57 miles an hour because the speed limit was 55.
How much is the fine for your ticket versus the cost of entire farming operation? It's a great deal more. When you as a farmer have to go to court to fight this, you have to take time, spend money that you may or may not have. And we're not talking about fighting a ticket in just a simple court of law. We're talking about a serious possible lawsuit. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in a county over simple things like drainage. And I've seen the threat for a farmer say from certain people in the government, we'll take your farm. We're going to put the screws to you and teach you a lesson because you're just a farmer. And that's
an example for that would include our overreach where they're taking somebody's farm.
I'm sorry.
Could you cite an example for a similar ordinance that they took over a farm that we're trying to do today?
Not in this exact perspective when you say this ordinance, but in a similar case.
That's the one we're talking about. So even a similar case, could you provide us an example?
Yes. Would you like to speak on this?
Well, we got involved in a wetlands lawsuit. We risked 80 acres. It cost $100,000 in attorney fees and special people. We did win. And I'm the man that she was an attorney out of Sioux City, a U.S. attorney. And she's the one that looked at me and said, when I get done with you, Mr. Doan, I will have your farm. Now she wasn't successful because we won the law case. And if you'd like to update yourself on that, it's B&D Land and Livestock versus the NRCS. We are case law now. So the threat did exist. And I would be honest with you today, I don't think I could win the same case in court because we used Judge Bennett out of Sioux City and he ruled in our favor. I'm not sure another judge would rule in our favor. So would you like to put 80 acres and $100,000 on the line and sleep at night? The government he didn't care. He's retired now and at full benefits. I'm still working.
You can only speak. I mean, I understand your concern with government, right? And obviously, you guys have a situation that, not knowing more detail, I feel like we might be comparing apples and oranges here, but I don't want to speak because I don't know any more details about it. But our intent is not for overreach for this particular ordinance on any language that's been clarified, cleaned up, etc. So, is there anything into what I'm speaking to that's contrary to what we're trying to accomplish here? Because there wasn't.
No, and we wouldn't take a definition. You have to take the definitions along with the methods and apply all of the things together. You know, we talked to the county weed commissioner to make sure we weren't overstepping on the Iowa chapter that he works within. You know, he's here today. So we have done a lot of work making sure that we aren't stepping on any toes, trying to do anyone else's job, rewriting things that already exist. And we will comply with and uphold right to farm laws. I mean, there's nothing in this ordinance that says we couldn't do that.
I think our past year comprehensive planning and whatnot that we've done in the county and the city of Clear Lake and Mason City supports the fact that we are very supportive of agriculture, and I don't think we would do anything to harm or risk. At the same token, I understand Cara and her staff's position because they have to have the tools to deal with stuff. And unfortunately, this is the sad part. Unfortunately, when we get the complaints aren't on wild animals or stuff like that. It's on dead animals that have been sitting there for a long time or chicken litter that somebody dumped too close to somebody's lot line, or manure management, which are, like Mr. Callahan was stating, as far as local control, the state has taken that from us. We have nothing to do. You call me about gentleman next door, and I've called Carr and her department several times. Nothing we can do because the state controls it. They have taken local control away from us. We don't intend on taking any more from the farmer than what we have, but at the same token, we have to have something to, if we have an actual complaint, to go out and work with the person. And that's what it would be with us, would be working with the person. We're not gonna go in and, I want to say, shut them down, correct, Carl?
Correct.
You can say it, but the fact is, it's written in a way that still comes down to it can be used in such a manner. And
Do you think, are there anything on the current ordinance of language that we're not clarifying? Is there anything right now in your operation that we could be doing if somebody called that we haven't?
I guess I don't really.
Here's my question, is that you've been farming for a long time, notwithstanding this wetland event, which sounds like it was not a good event. And I'm sorry that you guys had to go through that, and that it could have cost you dearly, even more than it already did. I guess my question is, the ordinance that we've had on books since 1989 has a lot of this stuff already in it. We're tweaking a few things, but if let's say we didn't do anything, is there anything currently in the ordinance that your neighbor could call right now and could have over the last decade complained about something that you would have had a punitive fine or been asked to clean anything up?
In the way it's written?
Yeah.
Vernon.
No, in the way it currently is right now. Could have any
in the way it was currently written versus this. So I don't know the definition differences between.
And I might be wrong. I guess the point I'm thinking is there's probably stuff right now that maybe you're not in compliance with.
Probably.
And it's up to this point, you've not had a problem. And I guess my point is, I don't think that these tweaks are going to all of a sudden be this giant overreach where there's going to be a bunch of problems. So my point is, a lot of this is probably already there. And so you're worried about that the language is already there, or it's going to be there. So you could do that. And I'm suggesting that the language is already there, but nothing's happened.
And you could tell me that, and I can understand your perspective. But here's the problem. Just because it's not today and not tomorrow doesn't mean, I'm sorry to say, you guys are older. Eventually, you'll end up going away. There's going to be new people, and how they think will decide further things. You start giving a little, and they give more and more, and people just keep taking until finally there's nothing left. It's the same quote when it comes down to, like, from the rabbi in World War II, first they came for so-and-so. Well, that's how the law works, in my personal opinion. First, you start doing this. See, it's for your own good. Just give it. And I might go, well, you know, he made some good points. And then maybe a year, maybe 2 years. You know, we need a little bit more. Well, I don't really want to fight because it's money out of my pocket and time. And then a little bit later, you know, we still need a little bit more. Where do we draw the line?
Point well taken. Did you have something you wanted to contribute?
Yes, I did. First, I would just.
Would you please do the podium?
Oh, yes, I would.
Name and address, please. This is being taped. It's on, I believe, YouTube. Is that correct? So, pardon me?
It will be posted.
Yeah. So the reason we use the podium is so that people can see the face and not the back of the head. So go ahead.
My name is Jason Hallberg, 10 First Avenue Northeast, Buffalo Center, here at the third party representation. Wanted or would ask that the county Board of Health would be so kind as to clear up a couple things that make sure to put them on record. And one thing I'd like to know, what are the health concerns or the health reasons that the Board of Health is using to imply that these changes need to be made. I would like a record made of that and how these specific changes address those things. If they'd make a record of that too, I'd appreciate that. And the specific differences. Like one specific difference that I saw that I think is completely arbitrary, would be a huge concern on the county level, is who the county has currently disposing of dead animal carcasses on county highways and gravel roads. Because now the county also would be limited by this Board of Health. And I think Mr. Doan's concerns are real, and I'd like the county to put them on record if they would. And then if I could hold that for a moment, they'd speak. I'd like to make one other comment before I step down, if you'd be so kind of allowed to. I think to the supervisor's comment here, I think in the United States and in the state of Iowa in general, we don't pass laws or ordinances that require or are subject to arbitrary enforcement. So the fact that the police officer did not pull you over at 57 miles an hour does not mean that he did not have the right to. And whether or not he didn't pull you over because it was you, because it was me, because it was her, is something that we never, ever, ever place into the law in the United States and the state of Iowa. So passing a law on the basis of arbitrary enforcement, I would think would be something that we would consider possibly not doing. And with that, I would yield and ask them to respond to put on the record to questions. Thank you.
I cannot list all of the changes in here. And I mean, there are many, many changes that have happened within just the definitions alone that I can't list off the top of my head and be able to respond.
Well, we can respond to you.
I can.
I mean, we're not in the final reading or anything like that, but we can respond to you. Tom?
Well, I work for the county. I just want to say the whole nuisance code is arbitrary enforcement. What is indecent? What is a health? What is reasonably offensive? That's all arbitrary. The criminal code's all arbitrary. That's why we have jury trials to determine if the officer, the county attorney, made the right decision. That's all arbitrary. So I mean, to say we can't pass arbitrary codes, they exist everywhere. That's why you have juries and trials and in our process that we have in America. That somebody ultimately determines above the code enforcement officer, above the law enforcement officer, if they were right in filing a charge or proving that. So I respectfully disagree with that comment. This code really, when you look through the provisions of it, most of this comes from the Iowa code. So whenever you try to enforce this, you have to remember also, we have rural and a significant amount of residential areas too. So if it was all rural and everybody had 10 acres or more, I agree, this would be a whole different discussion. But we have a multi-purpose industrial, commercial, residential, and mostly rural county. But we also, a lot of these issues come from more residential density areas. We get complaints a lot. We do zoning for the county, my office does. We go out and look at complaints, and if they're not justified, then it ends there. Just because a neighbor, we've run into neighbors who have it in for each other a lot. Doesn't mean the complaint's valid, though. I mean, you still need to let the process play out. You're preemptively complaining about something that never happened. Well, let it happen. This board's always going to be here, and if you have new people here that have a different opinion, you're just going to pass a different ordinance. So whether you pass this today and in 10 years, we have 3 new people sitting up there that have a different opinion of nuisances, they're just going to change the law, aren't they? I mean, so you can't prevent that by preventing this today. And that's all I have to say. I just think I understand what the speakers are saying. But I've been in government for 25 plus years dealing with codes. Current ordinance has been in place since '89. We've never had one farmer that I know come in here and say they're unilaterally doing this to punish me in the last 36 years. So, I mean, we have to kind of go on, how do we treat these ordinances? Not just, well, this could happen, this could happen. I could get picked up for assault tonight. Maybe I didn't do it. And I have to go to trial because somebody said he punched him in the face. That's all arbitrary. That's why we have the judicial system that we have in America. That's all I have to say.
Just curious on the dead carcass deal. Is his question there? Do you know that one?
So that's in Iowa Code as well, Chapter 167. Carcasses of dead animals not disposed in 24 hours. That language is in the code with that. But again, we try to reasonably work with people.
But I mean,
Even
as
if it's,
far
yeah.
as question was on the roadways and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know about, I would assume that's more county engineers department.
We move them away from properties where people live and Mother Nature takes care of them.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely create a list of every single update that we made and which code or which chapter was taken out of. Most of them will be out of 657, which is the nuisance ordinance. But, you know, we have pulled some out of, left some from our previous ordinance because they didn't need updating. You know, reference some other Iowa code chapters to make sure that they're aligning with that as well. So that's definitely something that we can put together.
Again, I'm just gonna say, my take, I guess, but they're there for a reason to give us some teeth, but I don't believe the enforcement is going to be strict. And I believe our public health department is open enough to come out and work with you. Hey, we've got some issues, you got some problems, and what can we do to work this out? I don't think we're going to be the Hitlers of the world in regards to this. But I do understand and appreciate every one of your points. But you know, having been on the board for 9 years now, and I was on public health for the first 5 of it, my big pain in the butt was the DNR, still is. Hopefully, you guys are out there listening to this. But do your jobs. But we get complaints and we can't do anything about it. And there's laws on the books. But
You tell me I need to trust you. I'll tell you, why can't you trust me? So where are we going to get on this?
All right, I'd like to state a few things in my thoughts. As you know, like I said before, I raised livestock for over 20 years. I would have dead animals. I would have smells. I would have all these things you're talking about. The fence lines, the weeds start getting out of line. I'd get a letter from the gentleman over here because of the purple loose stripe. You know, it's just a constant to try to keep up. And I understand all that. I understand your concerns. But then after our last meeting, when I really dug into this with the health department and with just reading the codes, that code already exists. I mean, that nuisance ordinance exists. It is the same thing. They just cleaned it up a little bit. It virtually, every law there virtually exists exactly like it's written. Just very small little modifications like putting page numbers and things of that nature. And then I went to the state code to start to compare what the state nuisance ordinance and other right to farm laws and things, how they compare to this ordinance. It's a copy word for word from the state. This already exists. So we're not creating anything. We're not taking anything away. We are just basically taking the state code and putting it. There might be a couple small little discrepancies, but nothing major. That really surprised me because I agree with what you're saying. I do. I really do. But this isn't anything new. This is, and the way it was explained to me when I started digging more at the state level and everything about this and how this applies to us is this isn't just for the rural area. This is for the county. And you understand, I know you do and I do too. I assume we're on the same page. The smells at my house when I would have 300 animal units there is different if I would be in the middle of Mason City or where I am out in the. It's different. And I see where it would be a nuisance in the middle of Mason City, right downtown Mason City, having that many animal units in Central Park and people having the complaints. Well, this code, this ordinance is to be able to enforce that in communities too. So when it's arbitrary, it's subjective, whatever, you have to have that ability to enforce it when it applies to an actual nuisance, such as in the middle of town. It's subjective, I know, but when you're in the middle of the country and there's a pile of manure out there, that's because that's where it belongs. I mean, it's different. You understand? Do you agree with me? That's where it belongs.
On that.
And the chicken manure that is a half mile from my house, and it just got spread last night, and the wind was blowing right at my house. You know what? It goes away in a couple days. That's just part of my choice of living out where I do, and there is not an issue with it. But if you were spreading it to fertilize Central Park, everybody would have an issue with it. But the thing is, this code doesn't differentiate, or this ordinance doesn't differentiate the difference. It has to be one ordinance for the whole thing. So that's what makes it very difficult to, yes, I can see where it applies here, but it doesn't apply there. So how do you do that? I mean, how do you do that different? It already exists like this. And it's the way it's been enforced is like this, where it'll be enforced if you wanted to spread chicken manure in the middle of town, or you want to do it in the country. It would be enforced if you tried to use that for fertilizer in Central Park, but not on all the ground surrounding my house, because that's where it belongs. It's just, I know it's hard. I really had to wrap my head around it, because I agree with you on all your concerns, but I had to wrap my head around, okay, I see that now, where since this ordinance applies to everything, not just the rural area. That's what I had to kind of wrap my head around. Okay, now I see how this would be a nuisance there, but not here, even though the ordinance is the same thing.
We could simply add the words in cities or townships into some of these definitions then.
The problem where we run into, where Cerro Gordo is a little bit like a unicorn in that we've got 99 counties. Clear Lake, the incorporated area, there's a line at State Park where we go from residential to residential. One's incorporated, one's unincorporated. And so there's a lot of residential area on the south side of Clear Lake that is under the jurisdiction of Cerro Gordo County. And so there are residential areas that we have to play within the confines of Cerro Gordo County that is different than 97 other counties, right? Dickinson County probably is the same thing because of the Great Lakes. But where we run into issues where we have problems that can hurt the body of water in Clear Lake, we have to have the tools to enforce things in the event they come to that. And so that's why we can't spot zone the way that you would suggest. And so we have to use some sort of language and have people that are reasonable so that you don't feel like we're coming at you. So that's where this gets to be, I understand you're thinking of your backyard, but there's also people's backyards on the South Shore that we have to protect as well. And so that's why it's different than just in cities. We have thought about that. We have thought about how can we just spot zone this and that. And this is the best language that we have to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish by not infringing upon farmers' rights, because we're all pro-ag here.
So you don't want to define something further so that you can make things to address your spot areas with better definitions that are clear, concise, and more precise. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And his mentioned South Shore brought up another example, and just using them for examples, but we have unincorporated areas that are people living right next door to each other versus the farmer who might be 2 miles from the next farmstead. We have, Birchnell or Hanford where there's houses next door to each other that they need stuff like this to protect their property rights next door to keep that concentration of garbage out of their areas also. So I'll set it that way. Does anybody else have anything to say here?
On this discussion point, I would, maybe it's something where this ordinance would be defined as affecting people that have less than 10 acres or have less than 500 feet from another residence that would be affected.
And how is that any different than the state code?
The state code, I was very surprised that when I read the ordinance and then I talked to Cara, I said, did you just copy the state code here? Is that exactly what you did? And your answer is no, it was already there. It was already there. We're just cleaning it up and putting page numbers and just tweaking a couple little things. And that's where I brought up the fact that we don't have a building code in the county. So how can we have, you have to follow this building code because we do not have a building code adopted by the county. Every city, every municipality does whatever they want there, but we don't have one. So how can we say that? And it was good point. So that was removed. I got that part removed. So that way you couldn't build a barn and it doesn't meet UBC, United Building Code. But I want to make sure that isn't even an option, but that's the way it's listed in the state though. It's so technically, yeah, it's just, there's a lot of laws out there that, yeah, it makes you kind of go, and I know exactly what you're saying. I know exactly where you're coming from, but this has been in existence virtually the way it's been written for my entire adult life. And I don't know of an instance where it's actually been used. You talked about a drainage issue, a wetland issue. That's a DNR, NRCS type thing. It really doesn't apply to this at all. That's a whole different animal. That's more state level and federal. But
Am I understanding you right? We already have a code in existence.
yes, or the nuisance ordinance is already in existence, has been since 1989, and it's virtually the same. There's a couple. She said there's a lot of little different wordings, but it's virtually the same thing.
So why are we passing something else?
Because when somebody wanted to enforce part of the code, they couldn't even use a page number. They didn't exist. I mean, it was organizing it better. So that way you could say, okay, on page this chapter or whatever, they could address it easier. If you would like to expound on that, Cara.
Yeah, it also, we wanted to clean up some of the definitions and make sure that they did actually meet state code. And then we also wanted to ensure that we were able to help some of the communities that have requested our help with their nuisances like Missouri, Thornton, and other smaller towns within Cerro Gordo County that would actually allow us to help them because they all have ordinances now, but don't have staff to enforce them. And so it would be using their ordinance and this ordinance to work together.
Anybody else in the public?
Yeah. So I didn't hear much comment about my thought there for the 10 acres or the 500 feet, away from any other residents. Then, I guess the other discussion is, I would like to see that put in the ordinance. And to say that the ordinance has been in effect from 1989, and that I think I sense a lot of resistance to change it much. And I would say that to say something's been in effect for a long time and we shouldn't change it, it's not a very good argument because slavery was legal for thousands of years and, that finally got abolished. So the argument, I find the argument that the way it's been and we should continue doing it the same way is not valid.
I think that the point they're trying to make is that this has been on the books forever and you guys haven't had a problem. So why are you so fired up about it now?
Because it got opened up so we can make more comments on it.
And I appreciate I'm glad you guys are here, right? Because this is how we work through things and citizen interaction. So I'm glad you're here.
Cara, did you have any comment or in regards to what he was talking about as far as distance?
I can't say that I've seen one written that way. But yeah, if there were examples on how that could work, and I guess we'd have to apply that to Cerro Gordo County and see if that would fit within something we could do and still meet all the needs of, the more residential areas.
Does the Right to Farm Act pretty much take care of all the issues that we're talking about here?
Well, Right to Farm Act, that's animal feeding operations. It's not as broad as people think it is. Nuisance enforcement can happen on agricultural homesteads, irrespective of the Farm Act. So that isn't all encompassing farmers are exempt. It's really shared for the family feeding operations. The court clarified that in 1990. So it's not as broad as you think. Now zoning gets more broad, which is a zoning is completely different. Another comment on as far as districts or just when Phil and I handle zoning, there are people who own land over 5 or 10 acres who don't farm. So I mean, it'd be a mess trying to manage that. That's why nobody writes codes like that, because they're a disaster to enforce. Obviously, the county referred to that. So I mean, there's a lot of exceptions that the average person doesn't know about. Michelle and I see a lot of it because we deal with zoning. So it isn't quite that simple. As far as like having a certain townships, that would be a disaster. Nobody would do that. I know no town in the city would have specific areas. This applies here, this applies here. So I don't think those ideas are practical or even operational. Not that they're not a good discussion points, I understand. But really from practical standpoint, that would not be something that the town could do.
Anybody else have anything new to share before we close this portion of the public hearing?
I'll say.
A motion and a second to close this portion of the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next up is item A, motion to approve or disapprove ordinance 11C on the first reading.
I'd move to approve as presented.
A second.
We have a motion to approve ordinance 11C's first reading as presented. Any further comment, gentlemen? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, it's roll call. It's roll call.
Roll call. Callahan.
Yeah. Gina. Yes. Watts.
Yeah. All right, moving on, we're going back to item number 8. Brandon, if you'll take the podium again. Please.
I didn't have a lot more to say. I was just saying I have a couple down for hydraulic issues. The Great All is still experiencing electrical ghost. It'll work in the yard. It'll work until you get to your spot. If it's not functioning once we get there, we're chasing that one down. I guess the only thing I'd love to do if you guys have any questions or comments for me.
How is the road grading operation going to take some of those curves off the rural gravel roads and make those a little better shape for drainage?
Yep, I've talked with the foreman about it. They would prefer to do it in the springtime versus now heading into the winter. So it'll be a project we'll move forward with in the next spring more so than we've done.
Update on Illinois and Rockwell while you're there.
So I've spoken with the architect. They're moving forward with getting the plans drawn up. They anticipate approximately 4 more weeks of work on those to get the final plans back to you guys for approval. So they're making progress on it. As far as right now, I'll reach out to the city to figure out what zoning permits we'll have to get or any setbacks and other requirements they have for the site itself. Other than that, I don't have a lot for the expert to do that.
Illinois.
Illinois, I guess we're hopefully going to move into have the contract move in next week. That was their initial plan. They haven't given me any updates saying that they won't. So it looks like they're going to try and move in next week and get it done in about a month's time. So hopefully about a month and a week from now, 5 weeks from now, that building will be.
The only other thing, and that's for my colleagues' benefit, you and I had a discussion the other day from Kinson's office. The community project funding, which they call CPF. And their suggestion was to have some project ready plans.
So what I want them to do, or what I've been doing, is reaching out to them and asking exactly what. I need some a little more clear than we've given us in that group of emails. So I'll send them some of the stuff we have prepared and see if that stuff qualifies for what the funding is that he was thinking of. So yeah, I'm moving forward with that. I just have to figure out if the projects we have ready apply or not.
We were talking about a few of the potential ones like the Rockwell South project or
the 1 by Plymouth, that guardrail.
Right, or the
D20 or
that bridge that's closed.
Yeah.
Projects like that that he could put together to possibly present when this funding comes available.
Yeah, that's, I'm trying to work with them to make sure more clearly what projects actually fit into the scope of of that funding. And then I'll move forward with, I'll talk with you guys first, figure out which ones you'd like me to present to them, because I don't want to push forward the program for projects you're not in line with. But, yeah, I'll keep working with them to figure out what our options are and then come to you guys.
So-
Ask which one you'd like to pursue.
Here's the old registration.
Of their equipment before you leave the podium.
And actually, like I said, it's just those two hydraulic problems and you're all right. Now, we still have the mouse problem in the one excavator, but we're dealing with that. It's just a small issue. It still functions. The large diameter pumps in there. Not pleasant, but still functional.
Fans get good lap.
Correspondence, communications.
We'll do it here.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned at 10:55. Thank you, everybody, for attending and for your comments. Appreciate it.